Never in my wildest dreams did I think we'd be talking about Abandoned again. You may recall that this is a game that was quite literally abandoned, and last we heard of it was around 4 years ago. It was being developed by this indie studio, Blue Box Game Studios, and spearheaded by one Hassan Karaman, who basically marketed this game in such a way where it seemed like it was a Hideo Kojima marketing ploy and took advantage of that when the end result was ultimately just a game that turned out to be very much like a scam in the sense of like it didn't really even exist and it was all hype with no real sauce or any kind of substance or any kind of product for that matter. And for the first time in 4 years, we're hearing about it again due to recent activity from Hassan Karaman. Right here we have Twitter user Hunter who explained it best, saying, Abandoned, the fake PS5 game that never released, is getting a sequel, seemingly. Hassan Karaman was spotted playing Abandoned Gospels of Blood on his PlayStation Network profile. For context, there was this prologue for Abandoned that was supposed to release sometime in 2022. It's 2026 now. That hasn't happened. And now, almost 4 years later, seemingly Hassan Karaman is testing out some version of Abandoned called Abandoned Gospels of Blood, as spotted by this Reset AR user. And there are one of two possibilities when it comes to what this game is. Either it's just Hassan Karaman working on this project for himself with no plans to announce it and no plans to really release it, or this is Hassan Karaman testing a game that he eventually does plan to announce and maybe trying to give off the impression that he has been working on this game for the last couple of years. And if that's the case, I suppose time will tell whether any semblance of results will come to fruition in a way where he can garner any kind of positive feedback. But right now, there's absolutely zero trust that Abandoned Gospels of Blood will yield any kind of substance, any kind of product, any kind of real game. Now, Hassan Karaman himself hasn't necessarily talked about Abandoned Gospels of Blood. This was just something that was spotted because his account showed that he was playing the game. So Hassan Karaman hasn't come out and started like marketing like he did before. But, it's still interesting that Abandoned hasn't really been fully abandoned and that there's something in this vein being played by the lead developer of this title. And the reason I'm making this video is because I want to warn people about the journey that Abandoned was, to highlight that Hassan Karaman is not someone to be trusted. If Hassan does plan to announce Abandoned Gospels of Blood and make it like a real product that he plans to release, you should be approaching any marketing surrounding this game with the utmost skepticism. Skepticism that is warranted when you look at what happened with Abandoned, 4 to 5 years ago. It all started on April 7th, 2021, when PlayStation announced on their official blog that Abandoned, a cinematic survival sim, will hit PlayStation 5 later this year. That's right, Abandoned was originally supposed to come out at the end of 2021. Accompanying this announcement was the following trailer that showcased some eerie-looking environments with some dialogue playing in the background. There was a bit of gameplay that was shown towards the end of the trailer. There's some kind of gunplay that happens right here. And the frame rate already looks very questionable. Now, initially, before people looked further into this, the speculation was that this was another PT kind of situation. PT being a game that was presented as this indie horror game that turned out to be a game developed by Hideo Kojima to tease the next Silent Hill game, the one made with Guillermo del Toro that ultimately, unfortunately, never ended up panning out. And so this game made tons of headlines with folks going down this rabbit hole of trying to make connections between this game and Hideo Kojima, all of the hints that would turn out to be either a coincidence or a purposeful attempt on the part of Hassan Karaman to make it seem Kojima-esque and to try to stir that pot in order to garner hype for his fake game. But then people actually began to investigate, and one of the first things that they found was that the trailer basically featured just stock Unreal Engine 4 assets. There was nothing actually unique about any of these assets. They definitely were not made from scratch. When news outlets like Bloomberg and investigative reporter Jason Schreier interviewed Hassan Karaman. Jason Schreier's take back then was that he was left with more questions than answers, was left wondering who else works at the studio, what kind of contract he signed with Sony, and who his mysterious funders are. And seeing the buzz surrounding his game, Hassan Karaman leaned into the Kojima conspiracy theories, at one point tweeting, "Guess the name, abandoned equals first letter S, last letter L, reveal closing in." I mean, obviously the assumption that people were going to make was Silent Hill, which exactly fits that bill. And theories got so wild that eventually Blue Box had to come out and talk about how there are no relations with Konami and how they apologized for the confusion and for teasing a name that seemed to indicate Silent Hill. And Blue Box has had to continuously insist that they're just a small indie studio with actual real people with no relation to Kojima or Konami. Hassan Karaman would eventually put out a couple of videos basically saying the same thing, that he has no relations to Kojima and that those rumors are entirely unfounded. And he tried to play the victim card of like, please stop doing this. This puts a lot of pressure on us, so on and so forth. But Hassan Karaman would continue to lean into the Kojima conspiracy theories in the way he marketed the game. It was obvious that he was kind of like intentionally rocking that boat. I mean, the dude was literally posting images like these, advertising the abandoned real-time experience, and in the background is an eye-patched character who sure as hell resembles Big Boss. And so yeah, eventually many, journalists included, came to the conclusion that the Blue Box conspiracy had no real substance to it, and that this is a game studio whose project had no relation to Kojima or, Konami properties like Silent Hill or Metal Gear. And I think Jason Schreier put it aptly in this tweet from back in June of 2021. It's a guy who promised too much, got more attention than he ever thought he would thanks to a string of wild coincidences, and is now in way over his head. And then came the release of the real-time experience, whose preload began on July 29th, 2021. And I mean, this bro really hyped it up, saying things like, "You have no idea, it'll be mind-blowing even if it is short. This is a great time for PlayStation fans." On the day of the real-time experience's release, Blue Box would release the following clip just showing some dude walking through floor. And while all that was happening, the real-time experience app was running into technical issues where people were just not able to access the content. And that went on for a couple days until on August 13th, 2021, Blue Box announced that the patch is now live and that the app has been fixed. And then the app would ultimately end up looking like this, with just teases of a couple trailers and gameplay demonstrations, with the whole idea being that instead of trailers shown through videos, these would be trailers shown in real time on the PlayStation 5, running on the console, so you can get the most accurate experience when it comes to how this game will look like. And then the trailer that was featured in this first batch of content for this real-time app was literally just the same clip that Hassan Karaman posted on Twitter of this dude just like walking through floor. That was it. This is what Hassan Karaman has been like hyping up, saying that it will be amazing even if it's short. And at this point, people were like, oh, okay, so this is who Hassan Karaman is. So this is how he operates. He's just like a grifter. Eventually, investigations began to be conducted about Blue Box Game Studios itself and their history of having a bunch of projects that were crowdfunded, that were advertised as, being in the works, and then never releasing. There were so many of these projects that Hassan Karaman worked on, and Abandoned just seemed to be among another one of those. This image right here that really highlighted the timeline of Blue Box's projects kind of really raised red flags about Abandoned's prospects, given the history right here of just so many essentially grifts that never ended up panning out. Eventually, Blue Box had to go into damage control, with Hassan Karaman insisting that Blue Box Studios and its game Abandoned is 100% real, despite their history of literally abandoning a bunch of other projects. People would also expose Hassan Karaman's deceptive marketing tactics, like trying to add more like breadcrumbs to this Kojima-style marketing game that had no substance behind it, with things like cryptic audio files with like Japanese audio and Japanese speech in them. This one Reddit user right here straight up baited Hassan Karaman and eventually managed to get a conversation out of him via text that highlighted that he was pretending like he didn't know where this Japanese audio came from, and that, his account was hacked and that's how it got uploaded, when it seemed really clear that this audio file was an intentional attempt to further mislead people and further hype up his project. But with people getting pissed off at Hassan Karaman's tactics, he decided to distance himself away from this audio file and pretending like it wasn't his actions at all and that this was some hacker who did this. And then came Lance McDonald, who is a popular modder, who came out and talked about how Blue Box Game Studios have now deleted most tweets that describe specific future plans for their game Abandoned. 3 months ago, they said there would be a playable demo soon. And he also pointed out how Hasan Kahraman lied about why the real-time experience app was a whopping 6 gigabytes when it showed just a couple seconds worth of footage or real-time cinematic or whatever you want to call it. And the way Hasan Kahraman was deleting past tweets just gave off this sense of Hasan Kahraman and Blue Box trying to cover their tracks and hide evidence. And at this point, we're into March of 2022, which is almost a year after Abandoned's announcement. So yeah, this whole fiasco went on for a while. Blue Box would then come out with this statement talking about cancellation rumors and insisted that Abandoned is not canceled, that they're working really hard on it, that, they have this prologue that they're working on that they'll release when it's stable, good, and ready, with them stating that their plans to release this in Q1 of 2022. Again, it's 2026 now, and there's zero signs of this Abandoned prologue coming out. And at this point, people were just sick and tired of Blue Box and Hasan Kahraman and the way he was dangling carrots and just his lies and deceptions and manipulations. And so he would come out with things like, do you want us to show development footage of Abandoned prologue to prove that this game is real? And duh, obviously people want to see the game. That shouldn't be a question even. But people were just fed up with what seemed like yet another attempt to play his audience. And people were just saying things like, just shut the fuck up and do something instead of what you've been doing since the start, which is overhyping literally nothing. And that would indeed turn out to be true. Eventually, on November of 2022, Hideo Kojima would have to come out and just straight up say that he has no relations to Blue Box Game Studios or Abandoned, calling all of that stuff just like a nuisance, because people have been pestering Kojima about this, because Hasan Kahraman has been leading people into believing that this is all somehow related to Metal Gear or Silent Hill. And then Hasan Kahraman had the audacity to pretend like they weren't one of the instigators of this, saying we want to thank Kojima for addressing the conspiracy openly and how it's not cool for both fans and developers for people to engage in these conspiracies. We hope everyone can close this for good. But it was Hasan Kahraman and Blue Box who stoked these flames. And so for them to come out and acting like it's the audience's fault for how Blue Box and how Hasan Kahraman lit this flame and kept it going, it's just a level of audacity that people are not a fan of. Hasan Kahraman at one point came on Sacred Symbols, which is Colin Moriarty's podcast, and scrolling down you can see that the top comments all talk about how Hasan Kahraman just never really directly answered any of the pressing questions that he was asked, which is why top comments say things like, this dude has a bright future as a politician. He didn't answer a single question clearly. Colin's ability to stay quiet during an interview and let the guests say more than they might otherwise is phenomenal, says his other top comment. Hasan has perfected the art of using a lot of words to say nothing at all. That was just the general sentiment. And then Hasan Kahraman's own community started to leak stuff, including assets that seemed to indicate that Hasan Kahraman was playing around with Photoshop versions of Abandoned that listed as Silent Hill 5, and basically highlighting how he very much was intentional in the way he's been stoking the flames of trying to have conspiracy theorists who like to engage in Kojima-style marketing games essentially bring more attention to his title in a very egregious way. And this particular screenshot of this series of tweets from Vision Gaming News basically talked about how this game was never going to happen and basically exposed all the lies surrounding things like the audio file and talking about how Hasan Kahraman lied about that and how he's been lying about the game's development, how the game's development is really not that far along, and how he's just been kind of fucking around, essentially. At one point, Lance McDonald on May of 2022 hinted that he deleted this statement, this one right here, where he conveyed some of what Hasan Kahraman tried to share about the leaked images showing things like Silent Hill 5, and him talking about how that was just all stuff that happened internally as a joke that somebody decided to leak. It was not meant to stoke any flames. Lance McDonald deleted that statement in collaboration with Hasan Kahraman, and he ominously hinted that, quote, you'll understand why I don't want my name around his when this shitstorm goes down. And he also criticized Blue Box for the way they like to reframe the narrative to make themselves look like the victim, with Lance tweeting, I love how Blue Box Studios just ignore all I actually criticized about their behavior and lie so far, and just said that I'd spread rumors that their game is canceled. I said you lied in a bunch of tweets about technical aspects of your demo app and future plans, which they did. As for the shitstorm that would go down, that would come in the form of this GameSpot article titled Blue Box Dev Behind PS5's Abandoned, Misled Fans, Solicited Business Deals, in Toxic Chat Room. And in GameSpot's latest article talking about the resurgence of Abandoned, they described as follows: more than half a dozen people who had close contact with Karaman explained that the project was in disarray, that promises were unfulfilled, and that the private chat the team used to solicit business deals had become toxic. Apparently, sources claimed Karaman spent more time playing Rainbow Six Siege than working on Abandoned. So yeah, GameSpot released this whole expose from sources who were basically community members of Abandoned who got sick and tired of Hasan Kahraman and his manipulations and his lies, and really broke everything down and got a lot of receipts and documentations highlighting all of the deceptive ways in which Hasan Kahraman engaged in order to attention farm, essentially. That article came out back in June of 2022 before, months later, Kojima would officially put the nip in the bud on November of 2022, saying that he had no involvement with Abandoned and that he had no involvement with Blue Box Studios. So yeah, I just wanted to remind you what a shitstorm all this was, just how far Hasan Kahraman went to attention farm and the degree to which he would play victim while continuously, very intentionally, dragging all of this along and continuously giving people and fans hope that maybe this is some kind of Silent Hill or Metal Gear related thing. When you look at what happened behind the scenes, it further highlights someone who's just kind of like this sociopathic liar. Now, is there a small chance that Abandoned Gospels of Blood is Hasan Kahraman's attempt at a comeback, and that he will release this game and it will be some kind of finished product? I don't know, there's a non-zero chance of that happening, but that would genuinely shock me. And what would shock me even more is if this game does come out, that it's in any way, shape, or form half decent. And so yeah, with all said and done, all I wanted to say is that keep an eye out for Hasan Kahraman and any activity he might engage in on social media promoting Abandoned Gospels of Blood. Make sure you remember Hasan Kahraman's past activities and approach this with the utmost skepticism until you see something concrete, until you see anything resembling a genuine, real game. Do not trust this. The ball is in Hasan Kahraman's court to win back the trust of the people that he deceived. He asked for this level of skepticism, this level of doubt, because of just all of the dishonest ways in which he's approached marketing his previous title, Abandoned. I don't know if Abandoned Gospels of Blood is just like a more finished version of Abandoned, or if it's a new project entirely. But who cares? This is a game that I trust as far as I can throw it, and I cannot throw it. So yeah, I don't know, just an interesting resurgence of a years-old story and conspiracy, and eventually people would learn to be scam. What do you think Abandoned Gospels of Blood is? Do you think it's a real product? Do you think it's something that Hasan Kahraman is planning to eventually promote? Or do you think it's just some kind of internal project that will never see the light of day? Is it another attempt to revitalize a scam? Or do you think it's, by some miracle, a genuine attempt on the part of Hasan Kahraman to ship a game? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.